I've been drawing a lot of flowers recently, so I thought, oh, I gotta have a break, gotta do something different. So I started doing some studies of some graffiti letters that I've seen on Instagram. You know, lots of people share stuff, and I like the technique, so I thought, oh, I'll start drawing those. And then I decided, well, hang on a second, why don't I try doing a flower, but in a graffiti kind of style? So this would be a little bit different. So I grabbed a picture of a yellow rose that I've had hanging around for a while, and I thought, right, I'll sketch it out and see how we go. And because I've never really done anything like this before, I thought I'll start realistically. So what I was trying to do with the pencil, first of all, was to just draw all the shapes of the rose, all the petals and so on, in a very realistic kind of style, and then I would try and change it, build on that, develop that into a more graffiti kind of style based on the studies that I've been looking at. So I'm drawing this all out really lightly because I want to be able to draw on top of it and change the shapes on top of it without really rubbing stuff out. So I'm making my pencil lines really quite faint and light at this stage. And then I go on to stage 2, which I call Graffitify. And in this stage, I'm trying to go with a sort of different shape, a more stylized shape to the petals. And I thought about doing them all big and fat and curvy like some graffiti is, but I really liked one of the letters I'd looked at that was quite sharp and angular with straight edges. So what I decided to do was change each of the petals that I'd drawn lightly, go over them with the pencil, and to try and change all of those curves into slightly more sharp and angular type of shapes. So it's got a slightly more, I don't know, kind of blocky, futuristic-y kind of space kind of feel because of the planes and the edges. So with most of the basic shapes of the petals done, what you can see me doing now is going in with the rubber and the pencil, and I'm just tweaking little edges, little shapes, little bits here and there, just to try and make sure that lines don't sort of converge right into each other and look a bit awkward, or I'm just trying to change some of the shapes slightly so that it angles, and I wanted some of the edges of the petals to actually look as though they were coming from the center of the rose, kind of like bursting out, almost like the rays of the sun. One of the recurring motifs that I like about graffiti art is the arrows that seem to grow off the edge of letters and, you know, twirl and swirl around stuff. So I thought what I would do here is I would try and change some of the petal shapes kind of subtly, kind of carefully, and tweak them a little bit so that they actually looked like disguised kind of arrow shapes pointing away from the center. So with the penciling done, it was time to start doing the inking. And what I wanted to do, and again, this is one of the kind of techniques that I'd done a study of and I really liked, was this very fat, thick outer black outline, and then combined with slightly thinner interior line work. And I've done this before, not when I was doing graffiti so much, but when I was doing some of the rose pictures from the past. One of the pink roses I did a while ago, I think I did that with thick outer lines and thin inner lines. But this is a whole different ball game because you're doing such fat, thick angular outlines, and then you're just sort of tweaking some of the interior ones so that they're a little bit thicker in places and a little bit stronger, just to add a bit of definition, because obviously if all your line weights are the same kind of thickness, it kind of can make the picture a bit flat and a bit boring. So after the inking, it's time to get the colours on. This is the fun bit, and I'd done a couple of kind of testers, and I'd come up with 4 different shades of yellow that I wanted to use on this. Well, yellow to orange. And unfortunately, they're all kind of different markers. One was a Promarker, I think 2 were Flexmarkers, and one was a Brushmarker, but those were the only markers that had these particular colours in. So what I was trying to do is get a gradation from a bright yellow at the top, down through sort of like mid-yellows and almost a yellowy orange near the bottom, to a pretty much orange to be my darkest base colour on the bottom of the rose. And I'm trying to blend them in along the edge. You should be able to see towards the left and right of the rose are some pencil lines, some little pencil strips that I've drawn in there. So I know that I've got to go that far with the first yellow, then I'm changing to the second yellow, then I'm changing to the third yellow, and of course the bottom section will all be the kind of dark orange. I'd used Letraset's own ink pens to do the ink lines with, and I'm using Letraset's bleed-proof marker paper here as well, so I was fairly confident that I could get pretty close to the black lines and I wouldn't get any smudge or bleed from them. And here you can see me going from a gold marker into this really bright orange. I think it's called Mandarin, but it's just such a lovely, bold, bright orange and really nice and dark. I had to use it. There's probably quite a big jump between gold and the darkness of that Mandarin orange. and probably if I'd had a slightly lighter orange marker, I would have used that one, but I was just using the ones that I have, so a kind of like needs must kind of thing, necessity being the mother of invention. I was just having to go with it as it was. So again, just filling in all of these colors. I think the top color was Tulip yellow, and then it was called Sunflower as the medium yellow, and it was Gold, the one you can see me using right now, and then Mandarin was the bright orange towards the base. So with flat colors on, it's time for some shadows. So I used the Mandarin for this because I wanted really, really strong shadows, and I decided to treat the drawing of the rose here like each specific petal is like a tile. So they're going to have shadow down one side or several edges there, and then highlights on the other edges. And I was hoping that would give them this kind of like beveled edge tile kind of thing. You just saw me draw an arrow in there, and that's going to be my light source, so I know where the highlight edges are going to be. And I also decided that I'd use the Mandarin to throw in a couple of little spray, splats there like graffiti sprays. And I used a similar technique with my yellow mid-tone Sunflower on top of the tulip yellow bits at the top as well. Then it was time to start doing the highlights, and for this I just decided to use a white gel pen, a Pentel Signo, because it was pretty much the thickest nib that I had. I would have preferred a slightly thicker nib to get those highlights even thicker and bolder, but it was alright, it was okay for what I needed to. And as you can see, as I put each of the highlights on here as well, set against the shadow, I'm hoping that idea of these petals now being kind of flat tiles, I hope that's coming across. With all those planes and angles and edges and only one light source, I'm pretty sure I might have made the odd tiny little error here, making sure one edge was shadowed and one edge was highlighted. So there might be a couple of little mistakes in there if you really felt like looking. But with that done, I decided I would do the background. So I rubbed out all the pencil lines I'd done in the background, and I started putting in just a light green first of all. And I wanted the background to look rougher, almost like it was spray painted on a wall or something. So I was using, I think this is Chartreuse Flexmarker here, and I'm just doing a very rough chisel nib kind of blocky thing. And then I go over that with a darker green, which I think is like a forest green. And I'm deliberately not going over all the chartreuse. I'm leaving some of that showing underneath, and I'm also putting in little kind of spray splatter kind of effects, like it's been spray canned onto the wall, and sometimes the paint has spat or splattered. But I've also left, hopefully you can see, a small kind of edge of the chartreuse showing against the shadows. So I had a lot of colours on at this stage, but I knew I needed to add more and embellish it a little bit more. So I'll go for stage 6's extras. So here you can see me using a pink Posca pen to add little kind of pink splattery effects to the outside edges of some of these outer petals, because on the original reference photo, even though it's a yellow rose, the very largest petals that are sticking outwards had a pink kind of edge. So I thought, well, I'll do it like splatters using the Posca paint pen, and then also because it's a paint marker, I can do these little drips that seem to drip down over the background and also even across the top of the rose as well. And here's where I start to get a little bit fussy, because I'm a bit worried it's not looking exactly like I wanted it to. So I go in with the black fine liner and I start to darken and thicken some of the interior line work that I'd done earlier, because I thought it was a bit too thin, and I wanted to add some oomph, some extra kind of emphasis to some of those lines and edges, make them stand out more. So I go in and add a little bit of extra black fine liner. Then I decide I'm going to use a yellow Posca pen to just put some kind of futuristic lines and shapes on top of some of the yellow petals as well, because I just feel as though some of those areas were just very wide areas of just sunflower or gold, and they needed a little bit of something extra just to spice them up, make them look a bit different. So last couple of things are some light bursts on the edges of some of the petals, a little bit of mid-tone splatters across the yellow sections, and also just to sign it, put my little tag down in that bottom right corner. So as an attempt at trying to graffiti a rose, there's the finished piece. I'm quite pleased with it. I like the shapes in particular. I like some of the ideas that I've used there. Some of the colour fields are a bit too flat, and I wish I could have added a bit more detail to them, and I preferred the way it looked in the rough version, which is right what you can see there. And what I did here was I did two halves. On the left hand half I tried to colour it in a realistic kind of way, very close to the photograph, and on the right hand side I tried to do it more graffiti and slightly flatter. But even having said that, some of the petals on this right hand side, you can see I've added more shading and there's more gradation of tone, in particular on that one. Then there's a couple more just underneath it, and I think that actually made it a bit more successful. So I wished I'd kind of done that a little bit more on the other one. But let me know what you think in the comments below.